last week on the Nefesh podcast. A privilege to have on and welcome my sister Paula. So you were adopted out of our family. Did you always know that you were adopted?
Yes, I was always told from a young age that I was adopted. I don't remember like my parents sitting me down and saying that, but I just knew that. I don't know how they told me or when exactly, but some of the thoughts I had were just, they don't need another kid in that family. They're good. Sitting there and making the call, calling her, and so the phone rang a couple of times, and a woman answered, and I said, "Is this?" I think I just said, "Is this Sandra Leonard?" And she said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "Well, I sent you a note a couple of weeks ago. I said, my name is Paula, and I didn't finish the sentence." And she just, she just started saying, sorry, I can't even say it. It really was it was just such a moment, but she just started saying, "Praise God, praise God, praise God." I don't know how many times. That's when I met the whole family, and then the one of the great things is that then a couple years later we moved from Utah to California, and with both of my adoptive parents being gone, it was such a blessing to us to have you all there. And we were able to really get to know everybody by spending holidays and, special occasions together.
And now for part 2, the exciting conclusion of our soul story with Paula Chugg. Fast forward a bit to 4 years after that, you went out with a few of us to go to see Grandma, who was Mom's mom, who right before she passed away. It was her 90th birthday, and you got to see and meet your grandma.
Yeah, got to meet Grandma Mickens.
And then Mom's, one of Mom's brothers, and then Mom's sister. I don't know if Uncle George was there or not. What was that like?
I think he was.
Was he there?
I think he was, but I had met George. So after the funeral, I came over like the next night.
That's right.
And
Uncle
spent
George
some time with everybody.
Yeah.
And she, I can't remember how long after that, but I have a letter that Aunt Lynn wrote me. It's really nice, long letter after that experience. But so I had met a couple of them, but I got to meet her other brother and Grandma, and see like the family farm and all that. And it was really fun and great, and everybody couldn't have been more loving and gracious toward me. It was really, really good experience, and thankfully I've been able to go back a couple more times to visit and get to know people a little better. And but yeah, and I was just so thankful to have met her, because she passed like a year later.
No, it was just a couple months. She turned 90 in July, and then in September she passed away.
So yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
So that was wonderful. And I was very thankful for being able to meet her and have that experience. Yeah.
So fast forwarding to just a few years ago, I think when you and I went out back to Iowa, I think probably 4 years ago, you and I went back for Mom's whatever high school graduation. She goes back
One of
a
her
year now.
reunions, yes.
But we
Which,
wanted to,
by the way, she didn't let us come to with
and
her,
she
but we
didn't.
will.
She was worried we would embarrass her, which we would have. But
And
I mean,
we're like, we're your best, you know, come on,
absolutely.
why
That's
not?
right. That's
Yeah.
right. Your best kids. Don't you want to show us off? So we went out there, and I remember talking to you about kind of your birth father, and we started to get
Yeah.
into that conversation and wondering who he might be. And at that time, so this is only 4 years ago, at that time, you were like, yeah, I'm just not there. I'm not
Mm-mm.
interested in it. But then something changed, because 2 years ago, I think you were visiting me, and you said, by the way, by the way, I found my birth father, or I found him on Facebook or something. Take us through
Yeah.
that. When did that start? Like, it seemed like
So
it
that's
changed
true.
overnight. All of a sudden you wanted to find him.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting thing. I really had not. So our mom remembered his name as being George Brown,
Okay.
and I couldn't fathom how I would possibly find him.
Yeah.
I also didn't know the circumstances of his life or anything
Sure.
like that. And so, I had all those same, obviously, worries and feelings about that. And then I would say to myself, do I need that?
Hmm.
Um, do I need that? I had great parents. I had great grandparents. I had, now I've got this huge family.
Right.
And I just felt a lot of, um, I felt a lot of peace from the people who were already in my life. And
Hmm.
I also didn't want to have one of these bad experiences, which I
Yeah.
are all too common. And I worried about it. I didn't want it to change, to somehow infiltrate and, you know, uh, make me feel feelings that I didn't really want to feel. So,
Yeah.
um, but I remember talking about that on our morning walks. And yeah, I just wasn't there. And then a couple of years ago, um, I just, I don't know. I guess I'm not really sure what prompted me to do it, but I felt like I wanted to know if I could.
Mm.
And so I did my ancestry DNA. So here's a little plug for ancestry. But had my DNA done, and so one of our sisters, my half sister, your full sister, Donnie Ann, had also done hers, and maybe that's what got me thinking. But she was now in the database. She was now in Ancestry's database, and so I did mine, and I knew then because it matched us up.
Right.
It said you're either, I think it says we're close relatives, like either, it doesn't come out and say half siblings, but it
Okay.
it measures, how many things you have in common, and
Okay.
she was like my closest relative on there.
Sure.
So what I could do was, with that information, because now once you have that, then I'm like, okay, now I need to know. Now I need to see if I can find this out. So once I could see all of the people that Donnie and I matched in common, I went through and I put a star by, because I could rule them out,
Right.
not on my birth dad's side,
Right.
not related in that way. So that really was a lot of impetus, because if I couldn't have done that, it
Hmm.
would have been maybe not possible.
Wow.
Maybe so, I don't know. But I did that, and then I could say, okay, these people I'm related to. And so on Ancestry, I think it's still this way. You can either make your profile public or private, but it's an on or an off, and you got to decide. And so I remember I went weeks where I was turning that thing on and off like a light, because I was worried. I'm like, who's gonna see me? Like, maybe my dad's birth family's gonna see me, and they're gonna want to know. I just freaked out about it. And I remember I'd go in like during the day, I'd turn it off. And then by the night I was calmed down, I'd turn it back on. It was just the dumbest thing. But it's just such a nerve-wracking thing. And so, because it means a lot. It's a weighty thing.
Right.
Being adopted is like a really big part of who I am, because I always knew, and I always used it to set myself apart. When people wanted to know what was interesting about me, that's what I would say.
Wow.
Always. And so it made me unique. And sometimes I liked that. Of course, sometimes I didn't, but at any rate, that's the way it felt. So anyway, one day when my profile was turned on, I got an email from a second cousin who said, oh, we're related, but I don't know who you are. You know, you're not in my family tree. I'm like, surprise. So, so, and I didn't know, you know, I'm still thinking George Brown.
Sure.
So, so I looked at his profile, and I don't think he had his, I don't think he was shared his tree or something. So I couldn't really see into this very far, but he was so nice. And so I thought, I'm just going to share. So I told him who I was in an email, and I said, this is my story. And I said, if you know who my birth father is, I just want to ask for your discretion, because I don't obviously want, first of all, I don't know if I want to make contact.
Sure.
And I don't know if he wants me to make contact. And I just don't know how I feel about all this. So he was so kind and respectful, and Christian man, and just his wife has been searching for a brother for years and years, and just kind of, we had these things in common. And he had recently retired, and he said, let me help you.
Wow.
And so, and so he showed me something, like I, gave him, obviously knew my birthday and these types of things. And so he kind of fleshed out his tree, and at one point sent me I could have this a little bit wrong, but this is the way I remember it, and sent me a screenshot of part of his tree, and there is George Flood.
Wow.
So not George Brown, but George Flood, Flood. And I thought, well, that's not that far off, and obviously I'm a blood related to this family. So I don't know how it couldn't, it had to make sense, even though I wouldn't know till much later that it really, really was solid, but I still doubted all along the way. But I couldn't imagine that wasn't who it was. And so I started doing my Facebook stalking performance. You can hire me, anyone, if you're interested. I'm good at it. So not really, but I did start trying to find him on social media and on public records and anywhere I could look. And so what I could see, so I felt like I found him. There was a man that I found, and I looked at his picture 10 different ways to Tuesday, and upside down, and in a lot of light and not a lot of light, and sideways, and asked everybody, do I look like this person? Is there a resemblance? And he was, by that time, in his, he's probably about 75, maybe, when that picture was taken.
Okay.
And so hopefully I don't resemble that much a 75-year-old man, but I felt like there was something there. I did. And so I looked through all the public records. I looked through everything I could. And what I determined was that he was married, had been married for a long time. And He had one daughter who the picture that I could see on Facebook looked like it was at her wedding. I think it was actually like her first anniversary, but at any rate, it was like a celebration, and a pretty picture, pretty girl. I couldn't see any resemblance between myself and her, but I really did. I just couldn't imagine that it wasn't him.
Right.
It just didn't make sense to
It
me that
just
it wasn't
it just
him.
felt like it was him.
Yeah, and I could see that he, he was living in California still. I don't know. I did everything I could, like I say, on Ancestry, looking at his family, on other systems, and I just thought it must be. Yeah, so I had found this information out on public records and whatnot, and I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do with it. But I came to California. I remember why now. It was because it was during COVID, and I came down to buy a car.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And so I bought it down in Palm Springs. I drove it up to see Mom before I drove it home to Utah. And so I went over to see Mom, and anyway, we had gone up to Donnie Ann's store, and then on the way back, we just kind of went over to your old neighborhood. We looked around at the houses. I showed her Tracy's house. I think that was the only time we'd been over in that neighborhood together.
Wow.
And it was fun. Yeah. And so then on the way home, we stopped at Olive Garden. We were getting some takeout. And again, it was during COVID. So we were in the car waiting for them to bring us the food. And this had been on my mind since I had gotten there, and I didn't know how to bring it up. And our mom is sensitive about my situation. She has asked me innumerable times, like if I have like hard feelings about having been given up for adoption. I mean, she's made me do like the test where she pushes your arm down and all that, to see if I have these residual feelings toward her. And she says, I would understand if you did. And I say, I don't, I'm good, but she still makes me do the test. Anyway, so I just try to be, cognizant of the fact that I don't want her to feel like I am making a judgment against her, because heaven knows I have made my fair share of mistakes, and their life is too short to judge. I just don't have time for that.
Right.
So there's just no time. I love her, and I am thankful for her, and that's all there is. So so we're sitting in the car, and I decide to spring it on her, and I ask her if the name George Flood rings any bells. And I didn't say what context or anything, but I didn't know where she'd go with it. And I remember she said, I feel like I have heard that name.
Wow.
And I said, could that be my birth father's name? And maybe you misremembered the last name. And she said, she had to really think. And she said, it could have been.
Wow.
She said, it could have been. As she thought about it more, it felt more right. And then I showed her his picture that I had found on social media, and she just said, I mean, it had been over 50 years. I said, I think that's him.
Wow.
So she just said, well, she wanted to know what I was going to do. I don't know. I don't know yet. So anyway, after that, I decided to do nothing. I sat on it. Of course, we were going through COVID and all that, and everybody had enough to think about with that going on. And so I busied myself. I started a new job, this and that. So it just wasn't necessarily on my mind. So a year ago, July, so a little over a year ago, I was here at home by myself on a Saturday afternoon, and I was not thinking about him. And out of the blue, I had a very strong prompting that I needed to write him a note.
Wow.
And it was very clear and very strong, and I didn't fight it. I found a note, a little cute little note card, and I wrote his last known address, and he was still living there. So I just said, this is who I am, and I'm happy. I'm fine. You know, I don't remember my words. I I'll have to look at them again because I've since been able to see that note. But I anyway, I just told him who I was, and I said, I'm good. I really am good. I want you to know that. I want you to have that peace.
Yeah.
If you even think about, you know, I didn't know.
Sure.
But I just said, if you have any desire to make contact with me, here is my information. And I just left it there, and I was going to be fine with that.
Yeah.
Well, I say that, but it really was a little bit hard when I
Yeah.
didn't get any response.
Right.
You know, I got nothing back. So that was July. I sent it on July 12th. And well, I guess I mailed it on the 11th, but it's postmarked the 12th. I can't remember. But anyway, I know it's postmarked the 12th, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So I sent that note. I heard nothing, and it wasn't in my mind. Off and on, it would come into my mind, and I'd be like, well, you know, I said I was okay, and I feel like I did what I needed to do, and you know, that's that. And I was very worried. I was very cognizant of the fact that all I could see was that he had one daughter, and I thought, that is such a special relationship. She probably has no idea about me. I could not imagine that she would. And I just thought, I'm not going to jump in on this daddy-daughter relationship and ruin it.
Right.
You know, I don't want her to think less of him. I just didn't want anything like that. So I just hoped that he got it, burned it, whatever he wanted to do with it. So then one night, Bruce and I were out to dinner. We were in a line, still COVID. We were in a line, a drive-through line to get dinner. And I opened my email to kill some time. And there was an email from Natalie Flood.
Wow. Wow.
And it was super, I mean, I was just like, what? Like Bruce was like, what? Did somebody die? Like,
Yeah,
he was
worried
that there was like some really, you know, terrible thing. And I'm like, no, it's, you know, I explained and I read it. And so Natalie is my half sister. And it was just kind of insane.
Was she the
I
girl
probably
in the
can't.
picture?
Yeah, she was the girl in the picture. Yeah. And so, I mean, we made contact through email first for a while. And I didn't even know if he was alive for a few emails. I did not feel comfortable asking anything, taking anything away from her. She was cautious, you know, obviously she wanted to make sure I was who I said I was, and I wasn't some, you know, after something or anyway. And so it took a while for us to build that relationship of trust. And so we did that. We eventually talked on the phone. And what I found out was just not what I ever imagined. So my dad was married at a very young age. He was in the Air Force. He married a woman in Arkansas, and they had a daughter, and that's Kelly Lynn. And they had a daughter, and that was not a very happy time. I guess there's just a lot of turmoil in that relationship, and so it ended not very long after. Kelly Lynn was very young, and her mother never really spoke of her dad again. And so she didn't know about him. She once, when she was young, said she was running away to find her father, and just, you know, kind of wanted this connection. And so, and I guess what I would say real quick here is just that so many times, like when I found Mom and all of you, I needed that helped fulfill me. But I really did not need this other part. I personally didn't. But what I have found out is that others did. And so
Others
I
needed
feel
you?
like, well, they needed me and they needed to know each other.
Wow.
So it was really important that I followed that prompting to write that note.
Wow.
Because Kelly Lynn would not have met Dad, at least not for a while. And so, or maybe not at all. And so he had that divorce, and then he met and married another woman, and they had a son, and that's my brother Nathan. And so Natalie, growing up, she knew about Nathan. She met him once when she was 6, but he didn't ever live with them, and she didn't know much. He was quite a bit older. He was already in college when she met him. And so, and she never knew about Kelly Lynn. And so she never knew about me, didn't have an inkling. And Natalie always wanted siblings. Always. She wanted to know Nathan better with all her heart. She'd write little books about him, me and my brother Nathan. You know, just the cutest thing. She wanted sisters. When she'd have sleepovers, she would take her friends' little clothes and hang them in her closet, put their little shoes there to feel like they were her siblings, to pretend. She really wanted siblings. And so she was actually really excited to know me. And so we worked together, and we found Kelly Lynn, and we made contact with her, which was so overwhelming to her. We tried calling, she didn't answer. I texted her and I said, "This is who we are. We just want to know you. We don't." And she was so sweet, and she responded and she said, "I just need a minute." Like, she's like, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Because she just was like, you know, she's quite, you know, she's older than us, and she's just like mature, and she's like, "I've gone how many years?" You know, she's like, "I need a minute." And so yeah, it was so great. I mean, she's just so honest, and she just has like a heart of gold. You can just see it. And so we talked to her the next day. We had a 3-way call, and with the 3 of us talked. I can't remember if it was before that or after that. We were researching, trying to find Nathan so hard. And I eventually found a record that he had passed like a long time ago. He died in 1992. He was only 29.
Wow.
And so I found that out, and I was hesitant to tell Natalie, because I just didn't want to be the bearer of that news. And I remember she called me like the next morning after I had found that, because we were in this investigative process together. And I remember she was talking about something, and I just, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I said, I think she had experienced a bunch of losses, their neighborhood, all these things. And I was like, I said to her, "You're saying all the wrong things. I can't tell you what I have to tell you, you know." And she's like, "What?" And so I told her. And so obviously we were both so sad. She more so, because she had met him and kind of, you know, in a young girl's way, like idolized this older brother that, you know, he was smart. He was at Berkeley. He was at UCLA. He was very smart and accomplished.
Wow.
And so it was hard to find that out. So, and Kelly never knew about Nathan, of course, she didn't know about any of us. So, so we made, I decided to go and meet my dad, George,
Wow.
in April. Yeah. And so I flew down and I went, and Natalie and I met like at a park and just chatted for a while. And then we drove over to he was in an assisted living. We drove over there. And so this is in April, and we had, it was just so nice. It was just nice. It felt good. I felt a little bit, I don't know how much I felt really. I felt that I felt that it was helping him.
Mm.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I
Yeah.
loved every minute of it, but I
Sure.
also felt like this is an elderly person. He was
Yeah.
in poor health, very poor health, cancer, and had been battling cancer. And I just thought, I hope that this helps him be at peace
Yeah.
with his life,
Yeah.
And so so we did a Zoom call with Kelly Lynn, because she couldn't come out. And so the four of us sat in his assisted living, and we talked over this Zoom for like 3 hours.
Wow.
And he was completely engaged that whole day,
Wow.
completely engaged. And Kelly Lynn was just so immediately loving and sweet to him. It was so impactful, I think, to Natalie and I, because she just said, I've always, thought about you, and I love you. And it was super, it was just the coolest thing to be a part of,
Yeah.
to see that reunion, which I don't think would have happened, because at least not for a long time. I think Natalie eventually would have found Kelly Lynn. She wouldn't have found me.
She wouldn't have known about
And
you.
no. And then a year to the day of me mailing that letter, our dad passed away.
Paula.
And he was never again like that, cognizant, aware, engaged, never again.
Wow.
We just had a miracle.
Wow.
Yeah. So luckily now we recorded that, so we have it to fall back on, but he was never engaged like that again. So we just all feel like it was such a blessing. And of course it was hard for Kelly Lynn. She didn't get to meet him in person, but she got to see him. She got to tell him she loved him. So that's why I say that, I think often if we let him, God uses us in these ways.
Absolutely.
And we just have to be aware and open to that, because I think he utilized me in that way. And I just am very blessed to be able to see it, because I think he uses us as often as we will allow it, but often we don't know the outcome. We don't, maybe we help someone and we never see them again, and we don't know this outcome. But this, I saw full circle for myself, and it just was, I just felt so blessed to be even a part of that. And so now I have more siblings.
As if you needed any more.
Because yeah, I needed more birthdays to keep track of. So so now we just begin the process of, we've reached out, we've talked a little bit to Nathan's mom. She's still living, and we have, we still get to meet Kelly Lynn. We haven't met her in person yet, and our families haven't met, and haven't met her kids or anything like that. So there's this whole, and now I've got like other cousins reaching out, So now there's this whole process of getting to know this new other side of my family.
Wow.
So
Paula,
yeah.
it really
So
is a beautiful story. Your life, I don't know that I was joking with you before we started recording that you're fearless, but I really think of you as incredibly brave and fearless. I mean, I don't know that I would have been able to do what you did, and just admire you so much. And obviously, I mean, you said that you needed to find us, but you were obviously missing from all of our lives and have made our lives so much more full having you in it. I can't imagine not having you in my life. And I'm so grateful that you didn't take the silences, waiting 2 weeks for mom to call. And I just know that I know mom, it had nothing to do with not wanting to talk to you, but everything with how do I do this? Do I tell everybody? What do I do? Like, she would have just been overwhelmed
right.
had you not done that, you know?
Well, and that was also, again, another time in her life that was hard. Her husband was, your
Yeah,
dad was elderly. He was
right,
older than she was, and he was
right,
in poor health.
right,
He did not, when I met you all at the apartment, he spoke to very few words. He was
right,
ailing,
right,
he really was. So
right,
um it she was caring for him. She was a caregiver,
right,
and then a mother of 10,
right,
already 10.
right,
And she was, spending a lot of time, figuring out where Aaron was and taking care of this and that and the other. And so, it's our lives we all have full lives.
yeah.
And so,
And yet,
I don't know.
if we don't take the time for these types of things, if we don't make the time for things and people that matter, I mean, it's obviously it's not full enough, because we need you and you need us, and now you have other people that you're connecting to who need you, and I just love it. I just think it's such a beautiful story, and I'm so grateful that when I asked you to share, I thought, well, maybe, I mean, it's such a private thing, but for you, you see it as, this is my life. And,
Yeah.
if this was turned into a movie, who would you want to play you?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I look just like Julia Roberts, so it could be
It could
her.
be.
But with the
That's
height
true.
and
The
everything,
height, right?
she's
Absolutely.
probably only 2 feet taller than I am. So really,
So maybe Lisa Loeb. I mean, she does look like you.
maybe, yeah. And then definitely for Bruce would be Brad Pitt.
Yes,
So it would be a
absolutely.
shoo-in.
I think that's a
Shoo-in.
good match.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, I'm glad for the opportunity. I mean, I think it's always, to me, it's fun to talk about. I feel like it's been if I died tomorrow, I would have had a full life. Because I have all of these people in it who love me and who I love. And it's been also an experience, like not only being adopted, but then adopting and having Ethan in our lives. And I think it's just, I don't know, it's just been a very big part of my life. And it's such a part of my life that it's who I am. I don't feel like it's personal or private, because if you know me, you probably know I was adopted, and you probably know I have 15 siblings. That's fine.
to know you is to know that.
That's right. Just last week at a work conference, what's the most interesting thing about you? I said, I grew up with one sister and I now have 15 siblings.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Love you. And
yep.
all of
you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode 10 of the Nefesh podcast. And we will talk to you next time.